The dolly's wheels squeaked against polished marble, each rotation a small reminder of everything Carter Hayes
Please
couldn't
go to the
afford to
second
fix.
floor.
Thank you. Straight
Sinclair
ahead to the
Tower
elevators.
rose
Got it.
43 stories above Boston's financial district, all steel and glass, and the kind of money that never looked at the men who kept its water coolers stocked. Carter pushed the load through the lobby, shoulders square, boots leaving no trace on floors cleaned by someone else's night shift. Maya's school had called during his break, another kid asking why she wore that thing in her ear, and the tightness in his chest hadn't loosened since. He rounded the corner too fast. The woman appeared like she'd been carved from the building itself, black suit sharp enough to draw blood, heels that clicked once before stopping. Carter jerked the dolly left. Water bottles rattled. She didn't move. Their eyes met. Hers were the color of a winter Atlantic, cold and impossibly deep. She studied him the way people study art they're considering buying, not with curiosity, but assessment. Carter held her gaze. 7 years delivering to this building taught him one rule: the moment you drop your eyes, you become furniture. The security guard jogged over, already apologetic. Before he could speak, she raised one hand. The guard froze mid-step. Her voice came low, controlled, the kind that didn't need volume. "What's your name?" Carter adjusted his grip on the dolly. "The guy with the hand truck. Not exactly on your radar." Something flickered across her face, gone before he could name it. "I didn't ask for your resume." "Carter Hayes." She tilted her head slightly, and he caught the calculation behind those eyes, numbers running, odds being weighed. "Are you free Saturday night?" The question landed wrong, all edges. Carter glanced at the security guard, who'd gone very still. "Saturday, I'm helping my daughter with a science project. Volcanoes. Messy. I need you to come with me to a wedding." The absurdity of it should have been funny. Instead, Carter felt that old instinct kick in, the one that used to read boardrooms before he lost the right to enter them. This wasn't a pickup line. This was business, and business always had teeth. "Whose wedding?" "My former fiancé's." No hesitation, no embarrassment, just fact delivered like quarterly earnings. "He left me. Now he's marrying someone else." Carter set the dolly down slowly. "And you want me to do what, exactly? Make a scene? Flash a smile? Be your well-dressed rebound?" She stepped closer. The scent of something expensive, bergamot maybe, or whatever people wore when they stopped checking price tags, cut through the lobby's recycled air. "I want him to regret everything. And I want you to be the reason." The honesty of it hit harder than any lie would have. Carter had been lied to by experts, people who made deceit look like devotion. This woman wasn't bothering with the performance. "Lady, you could hire a model, an actor, someone who actually fits." "They don't have your eyes." Carter blinked. Not because it was flattery, it wasn't. It was precision, a scalpel finding exactly where to cut. He thought of Maya's audiologist appointment next month, the upgraded hearing aid they'd discussed, the one insurance called elective. $8,000. Add the legal fees still hanging from the custody battle, the rent increase coming in 60 days, and Saturday night suddenly had a price tag. How much? $75,000. She said it the way other people said coffee, something routine, barely worth mentioning. One night, no touching, no romantic charades, just be polite, poised, and make him feel insignificant. Carter's throat went dry. 75 grand. He could cover Maya's hearing aid, the medical debt, 3 months of breathing room, maybe 4. Could stop lying awake doing math that never added up. Stop telling his daughter next month when she asked about the summer camp her friends attended. He knelt, pretended to adjust a strap on the dolly, bought himself 10 seconds to think. The lobby hummed with filtered air and distant elevator chimes. This woman, whoever she was, had just offered him more money than he'd see in a year. For one night. For playing a role he'd already lived, back when he wore suits that fit and people returned his calls. When he stood, he met her eyes again. One condition. Her eyebrow rose, elegant and skeptical. I pick my own suit, and I don't pretend to be anyone else. For the first time, she smiled. It wasn't warm. It was sharp, satisfied, the expression of someone who just confirmed a hypothesis. Perfect. I'm not hiring a role. I'm hiring a man no one forgets. She pulled a card from somewhere, her pocket, her sleeve, thin air, and pressed it into his palm. The paper stock felt heavy, expensive. Victoria Sinclair, CEO, Sinclair Dynamics. Below that, a phone number with no email, no address, just 10 digits that probably connected to people who made decisions that moved markets. My assistant will contact you tomorrow with details. The wedding is Saturday at 6, Greenwich, Connecticut, the Ashford estate. The name Ashford hit like a brick through glass, sudden and destructive. Carter's hand tightened on the card, creasing one corner. Greenwich. Ashford. 5 years collapsed into 5 seconds, and he was back in that conference room, watching his partner sign papers while lawyers smiled and his life's work became someone else's line item. Victoria Sinclair was already walking away, heels clicking a rhythm that sounded like countdown. Carter stood there, holding a business card and a dolly full of water no one would drink, trying to remember how to breathe around the weight of a name he'd spent half a decade trying to forget. The text came at 7 a.m. Tuesday, before Maya's alarm, before Carter had finished his first cup of coffee that tasted like the bottom of yesterday's hope. Unknown number, professional, clipped. Background check standard procedure, form attached. Return by noon. V.S. Assistant Carter opened the attachment on his phone, the screen too small for the legal language that filled 6 pages. Standard background authorization, credit check, criminal history, employment verification. The kind of paperwork that looked routine until you read the fine print about comprehensive digital footprint analysis and prior business affiliations. He set the phone down, picked it up, set it down again. Maya shuffled into the kitchen, hair sticking up in 3 directions, her hearing aid already in place. She'd learned to do it herself last year, small fingers more dexterous than his ever were. She signed good morning, they'd been learning ASL together just in case the hearing got worse, and reached for the cereal. Big day? Her voice carried that slight flatness, the sound of someone who couldn't quite hear their own pitch. Just work. The lie came easy, worn smooth by practice. You? Mrs. Patterson says we're dissecting owl pellets. Gross. But she grinned, gap-toothed and unafraid of things that made other kids squeal. Carter watched her pour milk, overfilling the bowl like always, and thought about $75,000. Thought about the form on his phone, the questions it would ask, the answers that would lead back to Beacon Innovations, to the 6 months in 2019 when Carter Hayes had been someone else entirely. He'd scrubbed most of it, paid a guy in Providence who specialized in making digital ghosts, wiping cached pages and old press releases, anything that connected his name to the startup that no longer existed. But scrubbing wasn't erasing. The bones were still there, buried shallow, waiting for someone with the right tools to dig. After he dropped Maya at school, she ran toward the building without looking back, fearless in ways he'd never been. Carter sat in his truck and filled out the form. He signed it with his thumb on the screen, watching the pixels rearrange into his name, and hit send before he could reconsider. By 2 p.m., his phone rang. Not a text, a call. The number had a Boston prefix, but felt like it came from somewhere colder. Mr. Hayes. Not a question. Victoria Sinclair's voice, unmistakable even through cellular compression. We need to talk. Are you working? I'm on break. Where? He looked around the truck, parked behind a Stop and Shop where he'd just delivered 12 cases of sparkling water to people who'd never notice him. You wouldn't like it. Address. He gave it. 15 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up, windows tinted dark enough to make the afternoon look like dusk. The rear door opened. Carter climbed in because turning back wasn't an option anymore, not with $75,000 on the table and Maya's hearing aid on his mind. Victoria sat across from him, separated by leather and the kind of space that felt intentional. She held a tablet, screen dark. My assistant ran your background check. Carter's jaw tightened. And? And there's nothing. No LinkedIn, no Facebook, no Twitter, no business registrations after 2020, no court filings, not even a parking ticket. She tapped the screen once, and it lit up with his face. A DMV photo from his license renewal. You exist on paper. You don't exist online. That takes effort. I value privacy. You scrubbed yourself. She leaned forward, and the space between them contracted. People who do that are running from something. Or someone. Carter held her gaze. The old him would have had a smooth answer, something that deflected without lying. The current him, the one who'd learned honesty through losing everything else, just told the truth. 5 years ago, I built something. A company. Good product, clean code, real market need. My partner and I were 6 months from Series A when he got approached by a firm that wanted to buy us out. He said yes. I said no. Turned out my no didn't matter. He'd structured the LLC so he could sell his majority stake without my signature. Deal closed. Company dissolved. I got nothing but a non-compete so tight I couldn't even consult in my own field for 3 years. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. A recalibration. What was the company? Beacon Innovations, supply chain optimization software for mid-sized manufacturers. And the firm that bought you? Carter pulled the wedding invitation from his pocket. He'd looked it up last night, confirmed what he already knew. He pointed to the embossed text. Ashford Strategic Partners, your fiancé's family business. The silence in the car became physical, a pressure that made Carter's ears ring. Victoria took the invitation, studied it like she'd never seen it before. When she looked up, her face had gone very still. The kind of still that meant everything underneath was moving too fast to track. My signature is on the approval documents. Not a question, a realization, said aloud to make it real. Probably. I never saw them. My partner handled the paperwork. By the time I knew what happened, it was done. She set the tablet aside, pressed 2 fingers to her temple. I approved 40 acquisitions that quarter. Ashford brought us deals. I rubber-stamped them. You didn't know. Carter heard himself saying it, offering her an exit she didn't ask for. I was just a number. Target Company Alpha 7 whatever. You can't remember every deal. No. Her voice cut sharp. But I should have asked more questions. About every single one. The driver shifted in the front seat, a small movement that meant they'd been sitting too long. Victoria seemed to notice and dismiss it in the same breath. The wedding is tomorrow. Will you still come? The question should have been simple. It wasn't. Carter thought about walking into the Ashford estate, shaking hands with people who'd dismantled his life like it was a quarterly earnings adjustment. Thought about Maya, her hearing aid, the science camp she wanted to attend. Thought about the fact that sometimes survival meant swallowing rage and cashing the check. I honor my agreements. He reached for the door handle. Even with people who destroyed my life, without noticing. The tailor's shop sat on Newbury Street, wedged between a gallery that sold sculptures Carter couldn't identify and a cafe where coffee cost more than his hourly wage. Victoria's assistant had sent the address with a time, 4 p.m., don't be late. And Carter arrived at 3:55 because old habits died hard. Inside, the air smelled like wool and cedar and money that had been old before it was spent. A man with silver hair and a measuring tape draped around his neck looked up from a bolt of charcoal fabric, took aim Carter's work boots and cargo pants, and managed to make his smile look welcoming and doubtful at the same time. May I help you? I have an appointment, under Sinclair. The doubt vanished, replaced by something more interesting. Calculation. Of course, sir. This way. The fitting room had 3 mirrors arranged to show every angle, which felt like overkill until Carter realized the point wasn't vanity, it was precision. The tailor worked in silence, measuring inseam and sleeve length, shoulder width and chest, writing numbers in a small leather notebook that probably cost more than Carter's truck payment. Any preferences? The question came casual, but the tailor's eyes were sharp. Something I could move in, no tie. I see. The tailor made a note. Open collar, then. European or American cut? Carter had no idea what that meant. Whatever doesn't look like I'm trying too hard. The man smiled, genuine this time. Honesty. Refreshing. He disappeared into the back and returned with a navy suit, the fabric so dark it looked black until the light hit it. Italian wool. Not flashy, but unmistakable. Carter put it on. The jacket settled on his shoulders like it had been waiting for him, sleeves hitting exactly at the wrist bone, length perfect. He buttoned it, 2 buttons, the tailor corrected, never 3, and looked at himself in the triple mirror. The man looking back was familiar and foreign at once. Same face, same scar above his left eyebrow from a hockey game in high school, same line of his jaw that Maya had inherited. But the suit changed the context, shifted the narrative from delivery driver to something else, something that didn't have a name, but commanded a different kind of attention. How does it feel? The tailor circled, tugging here, smoothing there. Strange. Strange how? Carter turned, watched the jacket move with him instead of against him. Like remembering something I forgot on purpose. The door opened. Victoria stepped in, flanked by her assistant, a woman who looked like she scheduled wars between breakfast meetings. Victoria stopped 3 steps inside, and for the first time since Carter met her, her composure cracked just slightly. A blink that lasted half a second too long. A breath held and released. You clean up well? Her voice stayed neutral, but something underneath it wasn't. Carter met her eyes in the mirror. It's amazing what a billionaire's budget can do. Did you choose the open collar? I don't wear nooses. The corner of her mouth lifted, not quite a smile. Good. I don't date men who suffocate themselves to fit in. Are we dating now? Carter turned from the mirror, facing her directly. She stepped closer, and the fitting room felt smaller. No, but for one night, the world might think so. And I need you to walk like you belong there. I don't have to walk like I belong, Carter said, the words coming from somewhere deeper than strategy, somewhere honest. I know I don't. But that doesn't mean I'll flinch. Victoria studied him, and Carter could almost see her recalculating, adjusting some internal model of who she thought he was. Do you know what makes people like Derek sweat? A man who doesn't need them. She nodded once, sharp and satisfied. Then let's give him a reason to panic. The assistant cleared her throat, a sound engineered to redirect attention. The car is waiting. We have the final briefing at 5. Victoria didn't move immediately. She reached out, adjusted Carter's collar with quick, efficient fingers, the touch impersonal and somehow more intimate for it. Saturday, 6 p.m. I'll send a car at 4. That gives us time to arrive after cocktails start, late enough to make an entrance. Carter looked at the suit in the mirror one more time, at the man wearing it who used to wear suits like this every day. What do I call you? Ms. Sinclair? Victoria? Victoria. We're supposed to be close enough that my ex-fiancé wonders where I found you. She turned to leave, paused at the door. One more thing. Derek will try to place you. He has that kind of memory. Names, faces, anything that might be useful later. Don't give him more than you have to. After she left, Carter stood alone in the fitting room while the tailor made final adjustments. He thought about Derek Ashford, about shaking the hand of a man whose family had bought Carter's dreams like they were buying office supplies. Thought about the non-compete that had followed him for 3 years, the nights he'd spent applying for jobs he was overqualified for and never getting callbacks because his name was attached to a failed acquisition. A cautionary tale in venture capital circles. The tailor stepped back. Perfect fit. We'll have it pressed and delivered tomorrow afternoon. Carter nodded, started to take off the jacket. In the mirror, he caught his own eyes, and for just a moment, let himself imagine walking into the Ashford estate wearing this suit, carrying himself like he had every right to be there. Not because he belonged, but because belonging was a choice, not a permission slip. Maya was building a city out of cardboard boxes when Carter got home, her tongue poking out in concentration as she balanced a cereal box on top of a shoebox. She looked up when he walked in, signed, "How was work?" with hands still dusty from whatever art project had preceded the architecture. Long. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door, the same ceramic bowl Maya had made in kindergarten, lopsided and glazed in colors that hurt to look at directly. What are you building? Future Boston, with sky bridges, and no cars because cars are bad for the environment. She placed another box, creating a tunnel system that defied physics. Mrs. Patterson says we're killing the planet. Mrs. Patterson's not wrong. Carter knelt beside her, steadied a box that was listing dangerously. But maybe we can fix it. Can you fix it? The question was innocent, the kind 7-year-olds asked because they still believed adults had answers. Carter thought about the Ashford estate, about the people who'd be there tomorrow night, the ones who made decisions that shaped markets and crushed small companies like his without noticing. Thought about the money he'd make for one night's work, money that would fix Maya's immediate problem but wouldn't touch the larger ones, the systems built to keep people like him from rising too far. I can fix some things. He helped her add another box, this one labeled in her careful printing, Library, Free Books. The rest takes time. She accepted this with a nod, already focused on her next architectural challenge. Carter watched her work, this small human who trusted him to make the world make sense, and felt the weight of tomorrow night settle on his shoulders like that navy suit, perfectly fitted and impossible to shrug off. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria's assistant. Briefing documents attached. Review before Saturday. Car arrives 4 p.m. sharp. Carter opened the attachment.
20 pages. Guest list, seating chart, background on Derek Ashford and his fiancée Natalie Monroe, brief bios of key attendees. He scrolled through names he didn't recognize, titles that sounded important: managing director, senior partner, chief investment officer. The kind of people who shook hands and ended careers in the same conversation. At the bottom of page 12, a note in smaller font. Derek Ashford, 37, managing director at Ashford Strategic Partners. Yale undergrad, Harvard MBA. Specialized in mid-market acquisitions and corporate restructuring. Led 17 successful acquisitions 2018 to 2020. Total value, $340 million. Carter's company would have been one of those 17. A footnote in someone's PowerPoint, a line item in a quarterly report. He closed the document, set the phone face down on the counter. Maya had moved on from boxes to drawing, her colored pencils scattered across the floor in controlled chaos.
She drew people, stick figures with carefully detailed faces, each one different. She pointed to one, a figure with curly hair and a big smile. That's you. I don't have curly hair. You do in the morning, before you comb it. She added another figure, smaller, with pigtails. That's me. Looks just like you. She drew a third figure, taller than the others, with straight hair and what might have been a dress, or might have been a very long shirt. Who's that? Carter asked, though something in his chest already knew. The lady with the shiny shoes. From the other day. Is she your friend? The question was simple. The answer wasn't. Carter thought about Victoria Sinclair standing in that fitting room, adjusting his collar, telling him to walk like he belonged. Thought about the $75,000, the transactional nature of their arrangement, the way she'd looked at him when she said, I want you to be the reason. She's someone I'm helping, with a project. Maya accepted this with the easy trust of childhood, adding details to her drawing. Shoes that were indeed shiny. A purse Carter hadn't noticed, but Maya had cataloged. She seemed sad. What makes you say that? Her eyes. They smiled, but not really. Like when you say you're fine, but you're thinking about bills. Carter looked at his daughter, this small person who saw more than she should, who understood that adults lied in small ways to protect the people they loved. You're pretty smart, you know that? She grinned. I know. Mrs. Patterson says I have emotional intelligence. That means I'm good at feelings. Mrs. Patterson's right again. Carter stood, his knees protesting. 38 wasn't old, but 12-hour shifts made it feel that way. How about dinner? I'm thinking mac and cheese. The box kind or the good kind? The good kind, with the breadcrumbs on top. Maya pumped her fist, a gesture of pure victory that made Carter's heart hurt in the best way. While she put away her art supplies, he started dinner, pulling ingredients from a refrigerator that held more condiments than actual food. The routine settled him. Boil water, shred cheese, mix the roux.
His mother had taught him this recipe back when she was still alive, and he was young enough to believe that good cooking could solve most problems. His phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from an unknown number, but he recognized the tone immediately. Forgot to mention, photographer will be outside the venue. You'll be seen. Might want to prepare for that. V. S. Carter stared at the message. He'd assumed this was private, a quiet arrangement between Victoria and her ex-fiancé, witnessed only by wedding guests who'd forget him by Monday. But photographers meant press, meant his face in society pages or gossip sites, meant the carefully constructed invisibility he'd maintained for 5 years might crack. He typed back, "I'm not camera shy." Her response came fast. "You might be when they start Googling your name." "I scrubbed my name years ago." A longer pause this time, the 3 dots appearing and disappearing twice before her message arrived. "You're not just a delivery guy, are you?" Carter looked at Maya, at the cardboard city she'd built, at the drawing of 3 stick figures that included someone she'd met once and already cataloged as important. Looked at the water boiling on the stove, at the life he'd rebuilt from scraps and determination and the daily choice to keep moving forward. I am now. That's all that matters. Saturday arrived, dressed in gray clouds that threatened rain but wouldn't deliver. Carter stood in his apartment bathroom, the navy suit hanging on the back of the door like a question he hadn't answered yet. He'd shaved carefully, trimmed the beard he'd grown more out of laziness than style, tried to remember the last time he'd looked in a mirror and seen someone worth photographing. Maya sat on the closed toilet lid, watching him with the intensity she usually reserved for nature documentaries. "You look fancy." "I look uncomfortable." "Same thing." She kicked her feet, heels hitting the cabinet in a rhythm that would have annoyed him if it were anyone else. "Where are you going again?" "A party. For work." "What kind of work happens at parties?" Carter met her eyes in the mirror. 7 years old, and she already understood that the world ran on contradictions. Work that wasn't work, parties that were business, smiles that meant something else entirely. The kind where people pretend to have fun while making deals. That sounds terrible. It usually is. He straightened his collar, buttoned the jacket. The suit fit exactly as it had in the tailor shop, perfect and foreign. But sometimes you do terrible things to get good outcomes. Maya frowned, processing this moral complexity with the seriousness it deserved. Like vegetables? Despite everything, the wedding, the Ashfords, the $75,000 sitting between him and solvency, Carter laughed. Exactly like vegetables. The doorbell rang at 3:58 p.m. Carter checked his watch, a cheap Timex he'd bought at CVS when his old one, the Swiss automatic his parents gave him for college graduation, got pawned during the worst months after Beacon collapsed. 2 minutes early. Efficient. Maya ran to the door before he could stop her, flung it open to reveal Victoria's driver, a man in his 50s with the bearing of someone who'd seen everything twice and been unimpressed both times. "Mr. Hayes?" "That's me." The driver's eyes flicked to Maya, softened imperceptibly. "Ma'am is waiting in the car." Carter knelt, pulled Maya into a hug that felt like armor and anchor at once. She squeezed back, her small arms surprisingly strong. "Be back by midnight?" "Before. This isn't Cinderella." "Good. Her dress was impractical anyway." Maya pulled back, studied his face with that unnerving perception. "You're nervous." "Little bit." "Don't be. You're the best." She said it with absolute conviction, the kind of faith that made Carter want to be the person she thought he was. And if anyone's mean to you, you tell them my dad is very important and knows karate. I don't know karate. They don't know that.
Carter kissed her forehead, grabbed his wallet and keys, followed the driver down 3 flights of stairs that smelled like someone's burned dinner and old carpet. The black sedan waited at the curb, same one from Tuesday, windows still tinted dark enough to hide anything. The driver opened the rear door. Carter slid in. Victoria sat across from him, and for a moment Carter forgot how to process visual information. She wore black, not the business black of her suits, but something else, a dress that managed to be elegant and severe at once, with a neckline that suggested armor more than seduction. Her hair was pulled back, exposing the line of her neck, a diamond necklace catching light that shouldn't have existed in the car's dim interior. She looked at him, and something passed between them that wasn't quite recognition, but felt close. You look different. So do you. The car pulled into traffic, smooth and silent. The kind of ride that cost more per mile than Carter made per hour. Victoria held a slim folder, black leather embossed with initials he couldn't quite read. Last chance to back out. You already paid me. Half. Wire transfer this morning. Did you check? Carter pulled out his phone, opened his banking app for the first time since depositing yesterday's paycheck. $247 after taxes. The new balance made his throat close. $37,747.32. Half of $75,000, exactly as promised, sitting in an account that had seen 4 digits exactly once in the past 5 years. He closed the app before he could stare too long, before the number could become real enough to jinx. I checked. Then this is happening. Victoria opened the folder, pulled out a single sheet of paper. One thing I need to tell you before we arrive. About the venue. Something in her voice made Carter's shoulders tense. What about it? The Ashford estate. It's been in Derek's family for 4 generations. His great-grandfather built it with money from timber rights, back when Connecticut still had forests worth cutting. They use it for events now, weddings, fundraisers, the occasional political dinner. It's beautiful. She paused, and the pause carried weight. It's also where Ashford Strategic Partners was founded, where they still hold their annual partner meetings, where they make the decisions that shape their acquisition strategy. The car's interior became smaller. Carter forced his breathing to stay even, forced his hands to stay relaxed on his thighs. So I'm walking into the place where they decided to buy my company. Probably. I don't know where specific deals are discussed, but yes, this is their seat of power. Victoria set the folder aside, leaned forward slightly. If that's too much, tell me now. We can turn around. You keep the money. I'll handle this alone. Carter looked at her. Really looked. Saw past the makeup and the dress and the diamond necklace that probably cost more than his truck. Saw someone who'd built something real, an actual company, not just a startup dream, and was using it as a weapon against a man who'd discarded her for better optics or bigger connections, or whatever bloodless reason people like Derek Ashford used to justify cruelty dressed as business sense. No. The word came out harder than intended. I'm going, because leaving would mean he wins. Victoria held his gaze for 3 seconds, 4, 5. Then she nodded once, sharp and final. All right. Then let's make him regret every choice that led him here. The car merged onto I-95, heading north toward Connecticut, toward Greenwich, toward a wedding that was really a battlefield. Carter watched Boston disappear in the rear window, the city where he'd rebuilt himself from nothing, where Maya was probably eating dinner with Mrs. Sen from 2B who'd agreed to babysit for $20 and leftover mac and cheese. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Good luck. Remember karate." He typed back, "Remember vegetables," and pocketed the phone before he could second-guess the metaphor. Victoria was watching him, expression unreadable. "Your daughter?" "Yeah." "What did you tell her? About tonight?" "That I'm helping someone with a project." "That's technically accurate." Victoria's mouth quirked, almost a smile. "Does she know about Beacon? About what happened?" Carter shook his head. "She was 2 when it all fell apart. She knows I used to do different work, that things changed. She doesn't know why. She doesn't need that weight." "She will eventually, when she's older." "Maybe." Carter looked out the window at Connecticut sliding past, trees and exits and the kind of houses that came with gates. "Or maybe I protect her from it. Let her think her dad was always just a delivery guy who makes terrible mac and cheese and doesn't know karate. But you weren't always, and she should know what you built, what you lost, what you survived." The certainty in Victoria's voice surprised him. "Why?" "Because hiding your scars teaches her to hide hers. And that's not protection. That's just teaching her to shrink." Carter had no answer for that. No defense that didn't sound like excuse. He sat in silence while the car 8 miles, while the sun dropped lower and painted the sky in colors that looked like ending. Victoria didn't push, didn't try to fill the quiet. She just sat across from him, close enough to touch and carefully not touching. 2 people riding toward the same destination for completely different reasons. The GPS chimed softly. "Arriving in 15 minutes, the driver announced. Victoria straightened, pulled a compact from her purse, checked her makeup with the efficiency of someone performing pre-flight checks. "When we arrive, stay close. Let me make the introductions. Derek will approach within the first 10 minutes. He won't be able to help himself. His fiancée, Natalie, will try to diffuse. She's good at that, smoothing over his sharp edges, making him seem warmer than he is." "And I do what?" "Exist. Be polite. If he asks what you do, tell him you work in logistics. It's not a lie." "It's not the whole truth, either." "Welcome to high society." Victoria snapped the compact closed. "No one tells the whole truth. We just choose which parts to display." The car turned onto a private road, trees closing in on both sides like walls. Carter's heart rate picked up despite himself, adrenaline preparing for a threat his rational mind knew wasn't physical. This was just a wedding. Just a night of standing in a suit, drinking champagne he wouldn't taste, pretending to be someone's date while the world watched and wondered. Just the place where his life had ended once before, dressed up in flowers and string quartets. The estate appeared around a curve like something from a film, all stone and ivy and windows that caught the dying light. Cars lined the circular drive, Mercedes, BMW, a Bentley that looked like it had been polished with silk. Valets in white jackets moved between them, efficient as surgery. The sedan rolled to a stop. The driver got out, opened Victoria's door first. She stepped out in one smooth motion, heels finding gravel with the certainty of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Carter's door opened. He climbed out, and the world shifted into high definition. Cameras flashing, voices calling Victoria's name, the rustle of fabric and perfume,
and barely contained curiosity. Victoria appeared beside him, slipped her arm through his with a touch that felt rehearsed and real at once. "Ready?" Carter looked at the Ashford estate, at the people gathered on the terrace, at the cameras tracking their every movement. Looked at Victoria beside him, this woman who'd hired him to be a weapon in a war he'd joined without knowing. Thought about Maya's drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands, and realized he'd already chosen his answer before the question was asked. "Let's go." They walked toward the entrance together, toward the music and laughter, and the man who'd cost Carter everything without even bothering to learn his name. The cameras followed, documenting each step, turning a private revenge into public spectacle. Carter kept his shoulders back, his stride even, his face neutral. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He was here, and sometimes that's enough to crack the whole foundation. The terrace opened into a world Carter had forgotten existed. White linen covering tables set with crystal that caught sunset like currency. Waiters gliding between clusters of people who wore their wealth the way other people wore skin. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable in a corner gazebo wrapped in roses that probably cost more than Carter's monthly rent. The air smelt like money and the kind of flowers that died within hours of being cut. Victoria's hand tightened slightly on his arm, a signal, though Carter couldn't decode it. They descended 3 stone steps into the garden proper, and conversations stuttered around them like engines misfiring. Heads turned. A woman in emerald silk whispered to her companion behind a champagne flute. 2 men in identical navy suits, not as well fitted as Carter's, stopped mid-sentence to stare. Derek Ashford stood near the fountain, one hand on his fiancée's waist, the other holding court with 3 older men who nodded at whatever he was saying. He wore his tuxedo like armor, perfectly pressed, perfectly fitted, perfectly everything. Then he saw Victoria. His expression flickered, surprise, then something harder, then the smooth mask of someone who'd learned to hide reactions before they could be weaponized. He excused himself from his audience and crossed the terrace with his fiancée in tow. Natalie Monroe moved like water, all grace and careful navigation, her wedding dress an architectural marvel of lace and structural engineering. Up close, she had kind eyes and a smile that worked too hard. Derek extended his hand to Victoria. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Victoria took it briefly, released it like she was handling evidence. "I always honor formal invitations, especially when they're dressed like provocations." Natalie's smile tightened at the edges. "We're so glad you could make it. And your friend?" The pause before friend carried weight. Carter stepped forward, not waiting for Victoria's introduction, taking control of the moment before it could be shaped by someone else. He extended his hand to Derek. "Carter Hayes." Derek's handshake was firm, competitive, the kind men use to establish hierarchy. His eyes narrowed slightly, searching for recognition, filing the name somewhere in that strategic mind. "Have we met? You look familiar." "I have one of those faces." Natalie turned her attention to Carter, and he saw her calculating too, trying to place him in their social ecosystem. "What do you do, Carter?" "Logistics, supply chain management." All technically true, though the scope had shrunk from building software to delivering water bottles. Derek's face shifted, subtle as fault lines. "Interesting. What company?" Victoria's hand found Carter's elbow, a touch that looked affectionate but felt protective. "Carter's independent, consultant work. He prefers the flexibility." The lie landed smooth, and Derek accepted it with a nod, though something in his eyes suggested he was still processing, still searching his mental database for where this face and name intersected. Carter held his gaze,
neither challenging nor backing down, just existing in the space with the same right as anyone else here. "Well," Natalie's voice carried forced brightness, "please, enjoy the evening. Dinner is at 7, dancing after. Victoria, you're at table 6. They moved away, Derek's hand returning to Natalie's waist, but he glanced back once. Carter caught it, the backward look of someone who knew they were missing something, who couldn't quite place the ghost standing in their garden. Victoria exhaled slowly. "That went better than expected." He recognized my name. "Possibly. Or he's just suspicious by nature." She guided Carter toward the bar, a mahogany structure manned by 3 bartenders in crisp white shirts. "Either way, the seed is planted. Now we water it." A waiter appeared with a tray of champagne. Victoria took 2 glasses, handed one to Carter. The crystal felt impossibly delicate in his calloused hand, like it might shatter if he breathed wrong. "To provocations." Victoria raised her glass. Carter met it with his own. The clink sounded like breaking. "And the ghosts they raise." The champagne tasted like apples and regret. Carter sipped it slowly, aware that getting drunk would serve no one's purpose here. Around them, the party continued its careful choreography, air kisses and handshakes, laughter that sounded rehearsed, conversations that carried the weight of deals being made in the spaces between small talk. A woman approached, 60-something with silver hair and the posture of someone who'd spent decades being photographed. "Victoria, darling, I heard you were coming but didn't believe it until now." Victoria's face arranged itself into warmth, though Carter could see the performance in it. "Margaret, you look wonderful." "I look old, but thank you for lying beautifully." Margaret's eyes landed on Carter with the precision of a targeting system. "And who is this?" "Carter Hayes. Carter, this is Margaret Thornton. She sits on more boards than there are days in the week." Margaret offered her hand, and Carter shook it gently. Her grip was stronger than expected. "Hayes, are you from the Boston Hayes family?" "No, ma'am, just the regular kind." She laughed, genuine and surprised. "Refreshing. Everyone here is from some family or another. Gets tedious." She turned back to Victoria. "I wanted to tell you, what you did last month, the Caldwell acquisition restructuring, brilliant. My nephew works there. You probably saved his job." Something passed over Victoria's face, too fast for Carter to catch, just correcting a mistake that should never have been made. Still, takes courage to admit when your company's been on the wrong side. Margaret squeezed Victoria's hand once, a gesture of solidarity, then glided away toward another conversation. Carter waited until she was out of earshot. What was that about? Victoria set her champagne down on a passing tray, took a fresh one in its place. "Nothing that concerns tonight." "Everything about you concerns tonight. I'm supposed to be your date." She looked at him then, really looked, and Carter saw something shift behind her eyes, a decision being made, a wall being lowered just enough to let light through. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my company had engaged in some aggressive acquisition practices, hostile takeovers disguised as friendly mergers, restructurings that were really just layoffs with prettier language. I fixed what I could, but it cost me. Cost you what? My relationship with my father. He was the one pushing those strategies. When I reversed them, I essentially told the world he was wrong. He hasn't spoken to me since. The string quartet shifted into something minor key, and the garden seemed to darken, though the sun hadn't quite set. Carter processed this information, slotting it into the picture of Victoria he'd been assembling. Powerful, cold, strategic.
Except she wasn't cold. She was armored. There was a difference. Is that why Derek left? Because you started caring about the collateral damage? Victoria's laugh came sharp, humorless. Derek left because I wouldn't bury a story about Ashford Strategic's SEC violations. He asked me to use my media connections to kill it before publication. I refused. 2 weeks later, he was engaged to Natalie. Whose family is? Old money, Connecticut royalty, clean reputation, everything Derek needed after that story ran. She finished her champagne in one swallow. He didn't leave me for her. He left me for what she represented. The dinner bell chimed, actual silver bells rung by staff in white gloves. Guests began moving toward the main house, toward the ballroom where tables had been set with the kind of precision usually reserved for surgery. Victoria and Carter followed the flow, his hand finding the small of her back, not because the script required it, but because something in her posture said she needed anchoring. Table 6 sat near the edge of the room, close enough to see everything but far enough to signal lesser status. The message was clear. Victoria had been invited, but not honored. Carter pulled out her chair, and she sat with the kind of grace that made the slight look intentional. The other, a single woman named Priya, who worked in venture capital and spent the first 5 minutes of conversation name-dropping her portfolio companies. An older gentleman who said little but watched everything with eyes that missed nothing. Dinner arrived in courses, each plate a work of art Carter felt guilty disrupting with his fork. Seared scallops gave way to duck confit, then lamb so tender it required no knife. The conversation around the table skated across safe topics: the weather, summer plans, a gallery opening in Manhattan that everyone seemed to have attended. Priya leaned toward Carter during the third course. So, you're in logistics? That must be fascinating. The word fascinating carried the weight of polite dismissal. Carter met her eyes, kept his voice level. It has its moments. Someone has to make sure goods get from point A to point B. Without us, your portfolio companies would just be ideas with nowhere to go. Something flickered across her face. Reassessment. Fair point. What's your take on the supply chain disruptions we saw last year? Carter knew this territory. He'd built Beacon Innovations specifically to solve these problems, had spent 3 years researching bottlenecks and inefficiencies before writing a single line of code. The knowledge was still there, archived but accessible. Most disruptions come from lack of real-time visibility. Companies run on legacy systems that can't talk to each other. By the time they know there's a problem, it's already cost them millions. What they need is integrated tracking with predictive analytics, something that can flag issues before they cascade. Priya set down her fork, attention fully engaged now. You're talking about AI-driven logistics. I'm talking about smart systems. Doesn't have to be artificial intelligence, just has to be intelligent. Victoria's hand found his under the table, squeezed once. A warning or approval, Carter couldn't tell. He'd said too much, revealed expertise that didn't match his cover story. But Priya was nodding, already launching into a discussion about a startup she'd funded that was trying to do exactly what Carter described. The older gentleman spoke for the first time, his voice carrying. He held his champagne aloft, Natalie beaming beside him, and launched into the kind of speech that hit every expected note: gratitude, love, future, promise. His voice carried the smoothness of someone who'd given many speeches, who knew exactly how to modulate tone for maximum effect. But when his eyes swept the room and landed on Victoria, something in his delivery faltered. Just for a second, a syllable held too long, a breath taken at the wrong moment. Then he recovered, finished the toast to applause, and raised glasses. Victoria didn't raise hers. She sat perfectly still, eyes locked on Derek, and Carter could feel the temperature drop around her. This was what she'd come for, not to disrupt the wedding, but to be present for Derek's moment and refuse to celebrate it. To be the reminder that walked, the price he'd paid made visible. The orchestra began playing as dinner plates were cleared. Couples rose to dance, filling the floor with careful waltzes and prescribed movements. Derek led Natalie out first, her dress creating its own weather system of fabric and light. They moved well together, practiced, the kind of dancing that came from lessons and rehearsal. Victoria pushed back from the table. "Would you like to dance?" Carter hadn't danced since his wedding to Claire 9 years ago in a VFW hall with a DJ who played too much Pitbull. But he stood, offered his hand, and led Victoria onto the floor because refusing would break the spell they were casting. She fit against him differently than Claire had, taller, more angular, carrying herself with the tension of someone who'd learned to trust no one. Carter placed his hand on her back, felt her spine straight as rebar beneath the silk. They moved into the waltz, and his feet remembered the steps his mother had taught him when he was 12 and awkward and certain he'd never need this knowledge. The orchestra played something classical, violins weaving through cellos. Carter and Victoria moved through the other couples, and he felt eyes tracking them. Curiosity, speculation, the hunger for gossip that fueled these gatherings. Let them look. Let them wonder. That was the point. Victoria's voice came quiet, meant only for him. "You're good at this." "I had a good teacher." "Your wife?" The question surprised him. "My mother, before she died. She said every man should know how to dance, how to make a woman feel like the room belongs to her." Victoria's eyes found his, and in them he saw something unguarded. Grief, recognizing grief. "She sounds like she was wise." "She was patient. There's a difference." They turned, and Carter caught Derek watching from the edge of the floor, champagne forgotten in his hand, Natalie saying something he clearly wasn't hearing. Carter held his gaze for 3 beats, 4, then turned Victoria away, breaking the line of sight. "He's rattled." Victoria's breath warmed Carter's ear. "Good. That's what you're paying me for." "I'm paying you to exist. The rattling is just a bonus." The song shifted into something slower, more intimate. Couples pressed closer. Carter maintained the respectful distance, even as every instinct said to pull Victoria in, to close the gap between performance and reality. She seemed to sense it, tilted her head back to look at him. "What are you thinking?" The honest answer would have been complicated. Something about how her hand felt in his, how the suit made him remember who he used to be, how dangerous it was to pretend at intimacy when the reasons were tactical. Instead, he told a different truth. That you don't flinch, even when you should. Her expression softened, just at the edges. "I used to. Until flinching became a liability I couldn't afford." "That's not strength. That's survival." "What's the difference?" Carter thought about the years after Beacon collapsed, the months of job applications and rejection emails, the night he'd stood in his apartment with Maya asleep in the next room, and a bottle of whiskey, and the kind of thoughts that came when survival looked worse than the alternative. Thought about choosing to wake up the next morning, and the morning after that, until choosing became habit, became life. Strength is knowing you could break and deciding not to. Survival is just not breaking yet. The music ended. Applause scattered across the ballroom. Victoria stepped back, and the space between them felt colder. Derek was approaching, cutting across the floor with purpose, Natalie trailing behind, looking apologetic. He stopped 2 feet away, close enough that Carter could smell his cologne, something expensive and aggressive. "Victoria, could we speak? Privately?" Victoria's face arranged itself into polite ice. "We've already spoken, Derek."
You sent an invitation. I responded by attending. Our conversation is complete. 5 minutes, please. The please sounded like it cost him. Carter moved to step away, but Victoria's hand caught his wrist. "Stay." Derek's jaw tightened. This isn't about him. "No. It's about you wanting control of a narrative that's no longer yours to shape." Victoria released Carter's wrist, but didn't move away. "You made your choices. You married the right family, secured the right connections. I'm here to witness that victory. Nothing more." "I didn't marry her for connections." "Then you're lying to yourself more effectively than you lied to me." Natalie touched Derek's arm, gentle but firm. "Darling, people are watching." Derek glanced around, and Carter saw him register the turned heads, the phones probably recording this exchange for later dissection. His face smoothed, public mask sliding back into place. "Enjoy the rest of the evening, Victoria." "Carter." He said Carter's name like he was testing it, rolling it around to see if it fit some pattern he recognized. Then he walked away, Natalie beside him, her dress whispering apologies the rest of her couldn't voice. Victoria's hand found Carter's again, and this time he knew it wasn't performance. Her fingers were shaking, barely perceptible, but there. "I need air." They moved through the ballroom toward French doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the garden. The night had settled fully now, stars competing with estate lighting and losing. Carter could hear the party continuing behind them, laughter and music and the clink of crystal, but out here the air tasted like rain that hadn't fallen and grass cut too short. Victoria gripped the balcony railing, knuckles white. Carter stood beside her, close enough for solidarity, far enough for space to breathe. "I thought seeing him marry her would feel like closure." Her voice came rough, like words forcing their way past barriers. "It just feels like watching someone get away with something. He didn't get away with anything. You're still standing. That's not nothing. I'm standing in the place he built, wearing armor I hate, pretending a stranger is my salvation." She turned to face him. "How is that winning?" Carter looked at her, this woman who'd hired him to be a prop in her revenge play, who was discovering that revenge tasted like ash, even when perfectly executed. "It's not about winning. It's about refusing to disappear." Something in her face cracked then, not breaking but shifting, tectonic plates realigning. "Is that what you did? After your company fell apart? Refused to disappear?" "I tried to disappear. Spent 2 years trying. But I had Maya, and she kept seeing me even when I was trying to fade. Eventually I realized I could be invisible to the world or present for her. Not both. And you chose her. I chose not to make her lose both parents." Victoria processed this, eyes searching his face for something. Truth, maybe, or permission to feel what she was feeling. "Your ex-wife, where is she?" The question should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt inevitable, like they'd been moving toward this level of honesty since the moment she adjusted his collar in the fitting room. "Gone. She left when Maya was 4. Addiction, chaos. I fought for custody and won. Haven't heard from her in 3 years." "And you don't hate her?" Carter thought about Claire,
about the woman he'd married who'd slowly been consumed by something neither of them understood until it was too late. I hate what she chose. I don't hate her. There's a difference. Victoria nodded slowly, like this answered a question she hadn't asked aloud. She turned back to the garden, and they stood together in silence, broken only by distant music and the sound of their own breathing. Carter's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A text from Mrs.
Sen. Maya's asleep. All good. Enjoy your party. He typed back a thank you, pocketed the phone. When he looked up, Victoria was watching him. You keep checking on her. She's 7, and I'm at a wedding 2 hours away with people who'd step over her to get to a better table. That's not fair to everyone here. Isn't it? Carter gestured toward the ballroom, toward the wealth and privilege on casual display. How many of them know what it's like to choose between medicine and rent? How many of them have ever had to tell their kid that the thing she needs isn't the thing they can afford? Victoria's face went very still. That's why you took this job. Not just the money. The anger. I took it because $75,000 means my daughter gets to hear properly and I get to sleep without doing math that never works out. The anger is just a bonus. She reached out, touched his face. The gesture so unexpected, Carter froze. Her palm was warm against his cheek, and her eyes held something he couldn't name but recognized anyway. The look of someone seeing past armor to the person underneath. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who needed me. You don't need anyone. Carter caught her hand, held it against his face for one more second before lowering it gently. Everyone needs someone. I'm just selective about who. A burst of laughter from inside broke the moment. Victoria pulled back, smoothed her dress, though it didn't need smoothing. We should go back. People will talk if we're gone too long. People are already talking. Then let's give them something worth the effort. They returned to the ballroom together, and the party swallowed them back into its rhythm. The Henderson couple wanted to discuss a property investment opportunity. Priya introduced Carter to her business partner, a man who'd made millions in cloud storage and wanted to talk about logistics automation. The older gentleman cornered Victoria about a board position, and she navigated the conversation with the skill of someone who could negotiate in her sleep. Carter played his role, polite, engaged, revealing just enough to be interesting and not enough to be scrutinized. But his mind kept returning to Victoria's hand on his face, to the crack in her armor that let something real show through. Kept returning to the fact that this was a transaction with an end date, and whatever connection he felt building was just another form of survival instinct. Two people recognizing shared trauma and mistaking it for something more. The party wound down near 11. Guests began departing, offering congratulations and air kisses, promising to see each other at the next event, the next merger, the next wedding. Derek and Natalie stood by the entrance, thanking everyone personally, performing gratitude with practiced precision. When Victoria and Carter reached them, Natalie embraced Victoria quickly, a gesture that seemed genuine beneath the social requirement. Thank you for coming. It means more than you know. Derek shook Carter's hand again, and this time his grip said something different. Not competition, but warning. Carter Hayes. I'll remember that name. Carter met his eyes, steady and unflinching. I hope you do. They walked toward the car, gravel crunching beneath expensive shoes. The sedan waited, driver ready, engine purring. Victoria paused before getting in, looked back at the Ashford estate, lit up like a monument to accumulated wealth and inherited power. I thought I'd feel different. Victorious, maybe, or at least satisfied.
Carter followed her gaze. How do you feel? Tired and ready to burn the whole thing down. The driver opened the door. They climbed in, and the estate disappeared behind tinted windows and Connecticut trees. Inside the car, silence settled heavy, the kind that follows adrenaline crashes and performance exhaustion. Victoria kicked off her heels, curled her legs beneath her, suddenly looking younger and more human. When we get back to Boston, you'll have the other half of the payment within 24 hours. This concludes our arrangement. The word arrangement hit wrong, too clinical for what the night had been. Carter nodded anyway. Understood. Unless... She stopped, seemed to reconsider whatever she'd been about to say. Unless what? Unless you'd like to have dinner sometime. No cameras, no performance. Just two people who happen to find each other interesting. Carter's chest tightened around something that felt dangerous and necessary at once. Every instinct said this was complicated, that getting close to Victoria Sinclair meant entering a world that had already chewed him up once. But he thought about her hand on his face, about the way she'd chosen truth over comfort on that balcony, about the fact that she'd seen him, really seen him, and hadn't looked away. I'd like that. She smiled, small and genuine, the first real smile he'd seen from her all night. Good. Because I'm not done figuring you out, Carter Hayes. The car merged onto I-95, heading south toward Boston, toward Maya and Mrs. Chen, and the apartment that didn't have marble floors or crystal chandeliers. Carter watched the road disappear beneath them and felt the weight of the evening settling into his bones. Not quite victory, not quite defeat. Just the strange aftermath of choosing to be present in a space designed to erase him. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He opened the message and his blood went cold. A photo. Him and Victoria on the terrace, his hand on her back, her face turned toward his. Below it, a caption. Billionaire CEO's mystery man. Who is Carter Hayes? The article loaded beneath the image, speculation dressed as journalism, questions about his background, his connection to Victoria, his intentions. Already 37 comments, people weighing in with theories ranging from plausible to absurd. Victoria leaned over, saw the screen, cursed softly. So it begins. What begins? The excavation. By tomorrow, someone will have connected you to Beacon Innovations. By next week, they'll have the whole story. That's how this works. Privacy is just the time between being discovered and being dissected. Carter closed his phone, pocketed it, tried to ignore the crawling sensation of being watched by thousands of strangers. And then what? Then you decide who you want to be in the narrative. The victim, the opportunist, or something else entirely. The car pulled up to Carter's building just after midnight. The driver opened the door. Carter climbed out, suit wrinkled now, tie loosened somewhere between dinner and departure. Victoria leaned forward, stopped him with a hand on his arm. Thank you. For tonight. For not flinching. You're welcome. For what it's worth, I think you're stronger than you believe. And I think you're more than you're pretending to be. She released his arm. The driver closed the door. The sedan pulled away, red taillights disappearing around the corner. Carter stood on the sidewalk in front of his building, in a suit that cost more than his monthly income, with a phone full of strangers asking questions he didn't want to answer. Mrs. Chen opened the door as he climbed the stairs, finger to her lips. She's sleeping. Was an angel. Ate all her vegetables. Carter paid her $40 instead of $20, too tired to care about his own budget. She left, and he stood in his quiet apartment, listening to Maya breathe in the next room. He checked on her, sprawled across the bed, stuffed rabbit clutched tight, hearing aid on the nightstand where she'd carefully placed it. He changed out of the suit, hung it in his closet next to clothes that cost 90% less, washed his face, checked his phone again. 73 comments now. Someone claiming to have gone to high school with him, someone else saying they'd worked with him at Beacon, the story metastasizing, taking on its own life. A text from Victoria. Ignore it. These people don't deserve your energy. He typed back. Easy for you to say. You're used to being watched. Her response came immediately. No one gets used to it. We just learn to build better walls. Carter set the phone down, climbed into bed, stared at the ceiling, and tried to process the night. The wedding, the dancing, the moment on the balcony when Victoria had touched his face like she was learning Braille.
Trying to separate performance from reality and found the line too blurred to distinguish. His phone buzzed one more time. He almost ignored it. Then he saw the number. Maya's school emergency line. His heart stopped. He answered before the second ring. Hello? Mr. Hayes? This is Sharon from Sacred Heart Elementary. I'm calling about an incident with Maya tomorrow. Well, Monday, during pickup. What kind of incident? A reporter approached her, asking questions about you, about a woman named Victoria Sinclair. Our staff intervened immediately, but Maya was quite upset. We wanted to inform you before... Carter was already moving, pulling on jeans, grabbing his keys. I'm coming to get her. Mr. Hayes, it's after midnight. Maya's safe at home, isn't she? He stopped, hand on the doorknob, reality catching up with panic. Maya was asleep down the hall, not at school, not in danger. He jumped timelines in his head, mixed Monday with tonight. Right. Yes. Sorry. She's here. We flagged your file. No media contact allowed. If anyone approaches her again, we'll call police. Sharon's voice carried the firm kindness of someone who'd dealt with panicked parents before. But I wanted you to know so you could prepare. These things tend to escalate before they fade. Carter thanked her, hung up, stood in his dark apartment with his heart still racing. This was the cost he hadn't calculated, not the scrutiny on himself, but the ripples reaching Maya. She'd be fine Monday, wouldn't understand why some adult was asking about Daddy and a lady she'd met once. But eventually she'd understand. Eventually the questions would connect to answers, and those answers would lead back to Beacon, to the company that died, to the father who'd been someone else before becoming the person she knew. He checked on Maya again, watched her sleep, and made a decision. Tomorrow he'd call Victoria, tell her this was done, that whatever dinner invitation or future connection they'd discussed on the balcony couldn't happen. Because protecting Maya meant choosing her peace over his own wants, and getting close to Victoria meant choosing complexity over safety. But even as he decided, he knew he was lying to himself, knew that he'd already started caring about the woman who'd hired him to be a weapon and seen him as a person instead. Knew that walking away would be the smart choice, and he'd never been good at smart choices when the stupid ones felt like breathing. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams he wouldn't remember. When his phone alarm went at 6, Maya was already awake, sitting on his bed with her hearing aid in and her tablet showing a video about volcanoes. She looked up when he stirred. Dad, you're famous. Carter's stomach dropped. What? She turned the tablet, a news site, celebrity gossip section. His face next to Victoria's under a headline asking, "Who is Mystery Man?" Maya pointed to his picture. That's you.
in a fancy suit. Where did you see this? Mrs. Patterson emailed me the homework assignment and I saw it on the sidebar. She didn't sound upset, just curious, processing this development the way she processed everything, as new information to catalog. Are you dating the lady with the shiny shoes? The question deserved honesty, even if honesty was complicated. I don't know yet. Maybe. Do you like her? Carter thought about Victoria's hand on his face, about the crack in her armor. I think I might. Then you should date her. She seems nice, and her shoes are really shiny. If only 7-year-old logic applied to 38-year-old life. Carter pulled Maya into a hug, breathed in her shampoo smell, artificial strawberry and childhood, and tried to remember when the world had been simple enough for seems nice to be sufficient evaluation criteria. His phone buzzed. Victoria calling. He sent it to voicemail, not ready for that conversation before coffee. It buzzed again immediately. A text. We need to talk. About what happens next. He typed back, I need to think. Her response, think fast. The story's already moving. Monday morning arrived with rain that couldn't decide whether to fall or just threaten. Carter dropped Maya at school through the back entrance, bypassing the main gates where a photographer had set up camp with a telephoto lens and too much time. The principal met them personally, walked Maya to her classroom while Carter watched through windows that felt too exposed. We've contacted building security. Principal Matthews kept her voice low, professional. No unauthorized persons on school property. But I can't control the public sidewalk. Carter nodded, jaw tight. How long does this usually last? Depends on the story. Celebrity breakups, political scandals, those have staying power. But this? She gestured vaguely at the photographer outside. You're not famous. She is. Once they decide there's no scandal, they move on. The conditional hung between them, if they decided there was no scandal. Carter thanked her and left through the same back entrance, hood up against rain that finally committed, walking 3 blocks before circling back to his truck. The photographer never looked his way. His phone held 17 missed calls, Victoria 3 times, unknown numbers filling the rest. One voicemail from a reporter at the Boston Globe asking for comment on your relationship with Victoria Sinclair and any business dealings you may have had with Ashford Strategic Partners. Carter deleted it without listening to the rest. Started his truck, drove to the Sinclair Tower because avoiding Victoria would only delay the inevitable, and delay meant giving the story more time to grow teeth. The lobby security recognized him this time, not from deliveries, but from photos circulating online. The guard's expression shifted from professional to speculative as he checked Carter's ID, made a call upstairs, issued a visitor badge with Victoria's name printed across it. The elevator to the executive floor moved too fast and too slow simultaneously. Carter's reflection in the polished doors showed a man who looked like he'd slept in his truck, which wasn't far from truth. He'd spent an hour parked outside Maya's school that morning, watching for anyone who looked too interested in a 7-year-old girl. Victoria's office occupied the corner of the 43rd floor, windows offering views of Boston Harbor and the Atlantic beyond. Her assistant, the woman who'd coordinated everything for Saturday, looked up when Carter entered, her expression carefully neutral. She's expecting you. Go ahead. Victoria stood at the window, silhouette sharp against the gray sky and grayer water. She turned when he entered, and Carter saw the exhaustion she'd hidden on Saturday, shadows beneath her eyes, tension in her shoulders that expensive suits couldn't quite disguise. You didn't answer my calls. I was busy protecting my daughter from photographers who think she's relevant to your story. The words landed harder than Carter intended. Victoria flinched, actually flinched, and he felt something twist in his chest. Guilt mixing with anger, mixing with fear he couldn't quite place. "I'm sorry." She crossed to her desk, picked up a tablet, handed it to him. "I had legal send cease and desist letters to 3 publications this morning, threatening lawsuits if they continue harassing Maya or approaching her school."
The tablet showed emails, official letterhead, language designed to intimidate. Carter scanned them, looking for loopholes, finding none but knowing that didn't mean they didn't exist. Will it work? It should. Most outlets won't risk litigation over a gossip story. She paused. But I can't control social media, or bloggers, or people with camera phones. Carter set the tablet down. Then what am I supposed to do? Keep her home? Change schools? Move to a different city? Or you let me handle it. Victoria's voice carried an edge now, something sharper than apology. I have experience managing media narratives, public relations teams who specialize in making stories disappear. But I need your permission to use them. Need you to trust me. Trust. The word sat between them like unexploded ordnance. Carter thought about Beacon Innovations, about the partner he'd trusted who sold everything without asking. Thought about Claire, about trusting her to get help and finding her gone instead. Trust was currency he couldn't afford to spend carelessly. What does handling it look like? Victoria pulled up a document on her computer, turned the screen toward him. We release a statement. Simple, boring, true. Carter Hayes is a private citizen who accompanied Ms. Sinclair to a social event. They met through mutual professional circles. There is no romantic relationship. Ms. Sinclair requests privacy for Mr. Hayes and his family. Carter read it 3 times, looking for the trap. That's it? That's it. No drama means no story. They'll chase the next thing by Wednesday. And if someone digs into Beacon Innovations, connects me to Ashford? Victoria's jaw tightened. Then we tell a different truth. That you're a former entrepreneur whose company was acquired by Ashford Strategic, that you've since moved into a different field, that your past business dealings have no bearing on Ms. Sinclair's personal life. You've thought this through. I thought it through Saturday night, when I realized hiring you might create exactly this situation. She closed the document, faced him directly. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to let me protect you the way I should have protected you 5 years ago when my company enabled yours to be destroyed. The admission hung in the air, raw and unexpected. Carter studied her face, looking for manipulation, finding only the exhaustion of someone carrying guilt she hadn't earned, but couldn't shake. This isn't your fault. I signed the documents. You didn't know. Ignorance isn't innocence. Not when you have the power to ask questions and choose not to. She turned back to the window, shoulders rigid. I've been thinking about that. About all the acquisitions I approved without really understanding what they cost. How many other Carter Hayeses are out there, rebuilding from pieces I helped create? Rain drummed against glass 43 stories above street level. Carter moved to stand beside her, close enough to feel the chill radiating from the window, far enough to maintain the space that felt necessary. You can't fix the past. You can only choose what you do now. And what am I doing now? Protecting you to ease my conscience, or because I actually care what happens? The question felt rhetorical, but Carter answered anyway. Does it matter? The outcome's the same. She looked at him then, something vulnerable showing through her usual armor. It matters to me, because if this is just guilt management, then I'm using you again.
Different currency, same transaction. Carter thought about Saturday night, about dancing with her while Derek watched, about her hand on his face on the balcony.
Thought about the dinner invitation she'd offered, the connection that felt real beneath the performance. What do you want it to be? I don't know. I just know that when I saw the photo of us online, my first thought wasn't about my reputation or bored reaction. It was whether you were okay, whether Maya was safe. And that terrifies me because I don't let people matter. It's too expensive. The honesty of it cut clean. Carter recognized the self-protection in her words, the way she was preemptively building walls against disappointment. He'd done the same thing for 5 years, keeping everyone at arm's length except Maya, convinced that connection meant vulnerability, meant loss. Maybe it's time to find out what happens when you do. Victoria's expression shifted, defenses lowering just enough to let possibility through. Are you saying you want to, what, date? Actually date? I'm saying I'd like to have dinner with you. Without cameras. Without strategy. Just to see if the person I met Saturday exists when there's no performance required. And if she doesn't? Then we have a nice meal and part as people who tried. Carter pulled out his phone, showed her a text from his delivery supervisor. Need you to call ASAP. Some reporter asking about you. What's going on? But I need this media situation handled first, because I can't protect Maya and figure out whatever this is simultaneously. Victoria nodded, already pulling up her phone, typing rapidly. I'll have the statement released within the hour. PR will coordinate with major outlets. Legal will follow up on the school situation. She paused, mid-text. I'm also going to assign private security to Maya's school, just for this week, until things settle. Carter's pride wanted to refuse. He didn't need Victoria's resources, didn't need to be rescued. But his fear for Maya overrode pride, and he found himself nodding. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is my mess. She finished the text, set her phone down. The dinner invitation stands. When you're ready. No pressure, no timeline. Just an open door. Carter moved toward the exit, stopped with his hand on the handle. Victoria? Yes? On Saturday, when you touched my face, was that performance? She met his eyes, unwavering. No. That was me forgetting to pretend. The admission followed Carter all the way to the elevator, through the lobby, into rain that had finally committed to being a storm. He sat in his truck while water hammered the windshield, turning Boston into watercolor blur, and tried to remember the last time someone had looked at him the way Victoria had, like he was worth knowing, not just worth using. His phone rang, unknown number. He answered against better judgment. Carter Hayes? Female voice, young, professionally cheerful. Who's asking? My name is Jennifer Park. I'm with the Globe's business section. I wanted to ask you a few questions about Beacon Innovations and... Carter hung up, blocked the number. The phone rang again immediately. Different unknown number. He declined it, turned off the phone entirely, drove to his first delivery stop with the radio loud enough to drown thought. The day crawled past in a blur of water bottles and elevator rides, loading docks and signatures on electronic tablets. His coworkers asked questions he deflected, supervisors made jokes he ignored, and by 3 p.m., when he had to leave for Maya's pickup, Carter felt like he'd lived 3 days in 8 hours. The photographer was gone from the school entrance. In his place stood a man in a dark suit, earpiece visible, posture screaming security. He nodded to Carter but didn't speak. Inside, Maya waited with Mrs. Patterson,
showing off a volcano she'd built from paper mache and red food coloring. "Look, Dad! It's gonna erupt!" Carter admired the volcano, helped her carry it to the truck, secured it in the back seat like precious cargo. The security guard walked them to the vehicle, scanned the street with professional paranoia, stepped back only when they were safely inside. Maya waved to him as they pulled away. "Who's that, man?" "Just someone making sure you get home safe." "Because of the shiny shoe lady?" "Because some people are curious about things that aren't their business." Maya accepted this with a shrug, already refocused on her volcano. But as Carter drove home, checking mirrors more than necessary, he felt the weight of Victoria's world pressing down. The security, the statements, the careful management of narrative. This was her normal, the price of being Victoria Sinclair. And he was choosing to walk toward it with eyes open, dragging Maya into proximity whether she understood the risks or not. His apartment building looked the same as always. 3 stories of brick and cracked concrete, Mrs. Chen's cat watching from a first-floor window, the bodega next door advertising lottery tickets and loose cigarettes. Home. Real. Unaffected by tabloid speculation or security details. Carter's phone, back on now, showed 2 texts from Victoria. Statement released. Initial response positive. And then, 15 minutes later, security will remain through Friday unless you prefer otherwise. He typed back, "Friday is fine, thank you." Her response came fast. "Have you thought about dinner?" Carter looked at Maya, carefully extracting her volcano from the back seat, treating it like the important work it was. Thought about what dating Victoria would mean. Photographers, speculation, his past examined under lights that would find every crack and flaw. Thought about what not dating her would mean. Returning to the quiet safety of invisibility, letting Saturday night become just a story he told himself when he couldn't sleep. He typed, "Saturday night. Pick the place." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "I know somewhere quiet. I'll send details." Maya called from the building entrance, volcano balanced precariously, needing help with the door. Carter pocketed his phone and went to his daughter, to the simple immediate need of keeping art projects intact, and tried not to think about how complicated simple had become. Tuesday brought reporters to Carter's building. Not photographers, actual journalists with notebooks and questions shouted through the intercom. Carter ignored them, told Maya they were selling something nobody needed, took her out the back entrance where the dumpsters lived and security cameras had blind spots. Victoria's statement had worked exactly as predicted. The story lost urgency, got pushed down feeds, replaced by a senator's scandal and a celebrity divorce. But the residue remained. People who'd bookmarked Carter's name, who sent connection requests on LinkedIn he'd never maintained, who wanted pieces of a story that didn't belong to them. Wednesday morning, his phone rang from a number he recognized, his delivery supervisor. Carter answered while making Maya's lunch, phone wedged between shoulder and ear. "Hayes, we need to talk." The tone said this wasn't about schedule changes.
About what?
About the fact that you're all over the internet with some billionaire, and we're getting calls from reporters asking about our company, and I've got corporate breathing down my neck about liability and image. A pause. "They want you to take a leave. Paid. Until this blows over." Carter's hand tightened on the bread knife. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know that. But you're a distraction. And in this economy, distractions get cut loose." The supervisor's voice softened slightly. "Take the leave, Carter. 2 weeks. Let things calm down. Your job will be here when you get back." The implicit threat was clear. Take the leave or find yourself unemployed. Carter agreed because arguing would change nothing, because Maya needed his health insurance, because losing this job meant finding another and explaining why he'd been let go. After he hung up, Maya looked up from her cereal. "Are you in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. Just taking some time off work."
Because of the shiny shoe lady? Everything kept circling back to Victoria. Carter sat across from Maya, watched her methodically sort her cereal by color before eating it. Kind of, but it's not her fault. It's just how things work sometimes. That seems unfair. It is. Maya considered this, nodded once, returned to her cereal sorting. Carter's phone buzzed, Victoria calling. He answered in the hallway, out of Maya's earshot. "I just heard from my security team. There were reporters at your building this morning." "I handled it." "And your work? Are they—" She stopped, seemed to recalibrate. "I'm overstepping. I'm sorry." "They put me on leave. Paid. 2 weeks." Victoria cursed softly. "I'll compensate you for the lost." "No." The word came sharp, automatic. "This isn't about money, and I don't need you solving every problem." Silence on the line, thick with unspoken tensions. Then Victoria's voice, quieter. "You're right. I'm trying to fix things I can't fix." It's a reflex. Carter leaned against the hallway wall, closed his eyes. "I know you're trying to help, but I need to handle some things myself. Need to feel like I have control over something. What can I do that wouldn't feel like I'm taking control?" The question surprised him. Its directness, its understanding of what he needed versus what she wanted to give. "Keep Saturday open. Let me meet you somewhere instead of sending a car. Let this one thing be normal." Normal. She tested the word like it was foreign. "I don't remember what that is anymore." "Then maybe we figure it out together." After they hung up, Carter stood in his hallway listening to Maya sing something to herself in the kitchen, off-key and happy. Normal used to mean delivery routes and homework and weekends at the public pool. Now it meant navigating media storms and hiring security and dating a woman whose life operated on a frequency he'd left behind 5 years ago. Thursday afternoon, Carter's past arrived in his present via registered mail. He signed for the envelope, thick and official, and his stomach dropped before he even opened it. Legal letterhead, family court, petition for modification of custody arrangement, Claire Winters versus Carter Hayes. The words blurred together, legal language that boiled down to something simple and devastating. Claire wanted Maya back, or wanted partial custody at minimum. 6 months of documented sobriety, stable housing, employment, therapy, compliance. All the boxes checked, all the excuses removed. Carter read it standing in his doorway, rain starting again, the mail carrier already 2 buildings down. Read it 3 times to make sure he wasn't misunderstanding. Claire had signed away her rights 3 years ago, walked out of their lives like they were a coat she'd outgrown. And now she wanted back in. Wanted Maya to know her as mother instead of absence. His hands shook. He forced them still. Called the only lawyer he could afford, a guy named Dennis, who'd handled the original custody case for half his usual rate because he liked Carter's face, or believed in the cause, or just needed the hours. Dennis listened while Carter explained, made sympathetic noises, delivered the news Carter had been dreading. "She has a case. Courts favor reunification. If she's genuinely sober, genuinely stable, a judge will at least grant supervised visitation. She abandoned Maya, left her with a neighbor and disappeared for 4 months. that doesn't just get forgiven. Legally? When addiction's involved? It absolutely can. Dennis paused. I'm not saying she'll win full custody, but she's entitled to try, and will need to respond within 30 days. Carter thanked him, hung up, stood in his quiet apartment with rain hitting windows and Maya at school learning about photosynthesis or the water cycle, or whatever else happened in second grade. Stood there and felt the foundation he'd built for 5 years start to crack, not from external pressure, but from something older, something he'd thought was buried deep enough to stay dead. He texted Victoria without thinking, "Claire's suing for custody." Her response came within seconds. "Where are you?" "Home. I'm coming over." He should have told her not to, should have maintained the boundary he'd insisted on Tuesday. But fear had priorities that overrode pride, and 30 minutes later, Victoria was at his door in jeans and a sweater, looking more human than he'd ever seen her, carrying coffee in paper cups from a place that definitely didn't deliver to his neighborhood. She handed him a cup, came inside without invitation, looked around his apartment with the careful attention of someone cataloging details. The worn couch Maya had decorated with stickers, the bookshelf holding more children's books than adult ones, the kitchen table scarred from craft projects and homework. Home, unvarnished and real. "Tell me everything." Carter handed her the petition. She read it while he paced, trying to burn off energy that had nowhere useful to go. When she finished, she set it down carefully, like it might detonate. "What's your lawyer saying?" "That she has a case, that courts want families reunified, that I need to respond and hope the judge sees that stable is better than reformed." Victoria pulled out her phone. "I'm calling my attorney. Family law isn't my specialty, but I know people who—" "No." Carter stopped pacing, faced her. "I can't afford your attorneys, and I won't start this by going into debt." "Then consider it a loan." "I don't want a loan. I want—" He stopped, unsure what he wanted except for time to reverse, for Claire to stay gone, for Maya to never have to choose between parents who'd both failed her in different ways. Victoria crossed to him, took his face in both hands, made him look at her. "You want to protect her. I understand. But you can't do that alone. Let me help. Not because you need rescuing, because people who care about each other help when it matters. We've known each other a week. Time isn't a prerequisite for giving a damn." She dropped her hands but held his gaze. "I'm not trying to buy my way into your life. I'm offering resources because I have them and you need them, and that's what you do when someone matters." The word matters hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to examine fully. Carter thought about Saturday night, about dinner at some quiet place Victoria knew, about trying to build something real while his past and present collided in family court. "If I accept help, it doesn't change anything between us. This doesn't become transactional." "Agreed. This is separate. Personal support, not business arrangement." Victoria pulled out her phone again, typed rapidly. "I'm sending you contact information for Margaret Chen, no relation to your neighbor. She's the best family law attorney in New England. Vicious in court, compassionate with clients. She'll take your case." "I can't afford pro bono. She owes me a favor from when I helped her daughter with a job placement." Victoria looked up from her phone. "Before you argue, this cost me nothing but a phone call. Let me make it." Carter wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain the independence he'd clung to for 5 years. But he thought about Maya, about Claire's petition, about the fact that his pride mattered less than his daughter's future. "Okay. Thank you." Victoria made the call right there, putting it on speaker. Margaret Chen sounded exactly like Carter hoped. No nonsense, sharp, asking pointed questions about the case history and Claire's documentation. She agreed to take it, scheduled a meeting for Friday morning, told Carter to bring everything: original custody documents, Claire's termination of rights, any evidence of her addiction and abandonment. After she hung up, Victoria started to leave, then stopped. Saturday, are we still? Yes. Carter surprised himself with the certainty. Unless you want to back out. I understand if this is too complicated. Complicated is my normal. Besides, she smiled, small and genuine. I'm not the one who flinches. After she left, Carter sat in his apartment surrounded by evidence of the life he'd built. Maya's art on the walls, toys organized in bins, school photos tracking her growth from infant to child. Everything he'd fought for, everything Claire had walked away from, now subject to legal review and judicial opinion. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Claire. I got your address from my lawyer. I don't want to fight. I just want to see her. Can we talk? Carter stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. 3 years of silence, then a legal petition, now a request to talk like they were reasonable people having a reasonable disagreement. He typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, "Through lawyers. That's how this works now." Her response came fast. "Please, I know I don't deserve anything, but 5 minutes, just to explain." Every instinct said no. Every lesson learned said protect yourself, don't engage, let the lawyers handle everything. But some part of him, the part that had loved Claire once, that had promised to support her through sickness, needed to understand. Needed to see her face when she explained why now, why this, why reaching for Maya after years of choosing everything else. He typed, Saturday, 10 a.m., Public Garden. You get 10 minutes. Then he called Victoria, told her he needed to postpone dinner, explained about Claire. Expected disappointment, got understanding instead. Take care of what matters. We'll reschedule. A pause. Do you want me there? At the meeting? No. This I need to do alone. Okay, but call after. Let me know you're all right. Carter agreed, hung up, spent the rest of Thursday preparing for Friday's meeting with Margaret Chen and Saturday's confrontation with Claire. Pulled out boxes he'd stored when the custody case closed, medical records showing Claire's hospitalizations, police reports from wellness checks, texts and voicemails documenting her decline. Evidence he'd hoped never to need again. Proof that love sometimes meant choosing the person you loved less to protect the person you loved more. Maya came home from school with another art project, a drawing of their family. 2 figures, her and Carter. No mother in the frame, because in Maya's world, mothers were theoretical concepts other kids had. Carter looked at the drawing and felt his heart crack cleanly down the middle. It's perfect, sweetheart. Mrs. Patterson said we should draw our whole family. But this is my whole family. You and me. Carter pulled her close, breathed in her strawberry shampoo, tried to memorize this moment before it became complicated by courts and lawyers and the mother who wanted back in. You're right. This is our whole family. Friday morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of November day that felt like winter testing its welcome. Margaret Chen's office occupied the 15th floor of a building near Copley Square, all glass and steel and the kind of art that existed to intimidate. She met Carter in the lobby personally, mid-50s, with silver hair and eyes that probably made opposing counsel rethink their careers. Mr. Hayes, come with me. Her office held floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, legal texts mixed with novels and poetry,
a desk that looked like it predated the building. She gestured Carter to a leather chair, sat across from him, opened the file he'd emailed. "I've reviewed everything. The original custody case, Claire's termination of rights, her current petition."
I'll be direct. She has standing. The question is whether she has merit. Margaret leaned forward. Tell me about your daughter, not the legal facts. The real child. Carter talked for 20 minutes about Maya's love of volcanoes and terrible knock-knock jokes, about her hearing aid and the way she signed "I love you" every morning before school, about the night terrors she'd had for 6 months after Claire left, waking up screaming for a mother who wasn't there, about how it took a year before she stopped asking when Mommy was coming home, another year before she stopped mentioning her at all. Margaret took notes, asked pointed questions, built a picture of Maya that went beyond court documents. When Carter finished, she set down her pen. Here's what's going to happen. Claire will get supervised visitation. The judge will grant it because courts favor parent-child relationships, and 6 months of sobriety shows effort. But full custody? Joint custody? No. Not unless you're proven unfit, which nothing in this file suggests. So Maya has to see her? Yes, but we control the terms. Supervised, time-limited, no overnight visits. And we document everything. If Claire relapses, if she misses sessions, if she shows up impaired even once, we use it. Build the case that her reformation isn't stable enough for more access. The strategy made sense legally. Emotionally, it felt like feeding Maya to uncertainty in measured doses. But Carter nodded, signed the retainer Margaret pushed across the desk, pro bono, as Victoria promised, and left her office with a court date 3 weeks out and instructions to tell Maya nothing until they knew more. Saturday morning came too fast. Carter woke at dawn, couldn't fall back asleep, made coffee, and watched Boston wake up through his window. At 9:30, he walked to the public garden, early because anxious, taking the long route because delay felt like control. Claire sat on a bench near the lagoon, wearing clean jeans and a jacket that looked new. Hair pulled back, makeup minimal. She looked healthier than Carter remembered. Color in her cheeks, steadiness in her posture. Looked like someone who'd climbed out of the hole that swallowed her. And the sight made him angry in ways he hadn't prepared for. She stood when she saw him, didn't approach, waited for Carter to close the distance. And even that felt like strategy, like someone had coached her on how to seem less threatening. "Thank you for coming." Carter checked his watch. "You have 10 minutes. I'm not trying to take her from you. You're suing for custody. That's exactly what you're trying to do." Claire's face creased. Pain or performance, Carter couldn't tell. "I'm trying to be her mother. There's a difference. You had your chance. You chose drugs. You chose to leave. Those were your choices, and they don't get erased because you're sober now." "I was sick." "You were selfish." The words came harder than Carter intended, years of suppressed rage finding voice. "You had resources, insurance, support. You could have gone to treatment and came back. Instead, you disappeared, left Maya with Mrs. Chen and a note about needing space. 4 months, Claire. She was 4 years old." Tears tracked down Claire's face, and Carter felt nothing. Had cried himself out years ago, watching Maya cry for a mother who wasn't coming back. "I know I can't fix that. Can't undo it. But I'm different now. 6 months clean, therapy 3 times a week, steady job, stable housing. I've done everything right. For 6 months. Maya's been without you for 3 years.
And whose fault is that? The question came sharp, defensive. Then Claire seemed to catch herself. I'm sorry, I don't mean... You did the right thing, fighting for custody, protecting her. But she's my daughter too. I have rights. You signed those rights away. Under duress. I was actively using.
Not in my right mind. A judge will see that. Carter's hands curled into fists, relaxed with effort. What do you want, Claire? Really? I want to know her. Want her to know I didn't just abandon her because I stopped loving her. I was drowning, and I couldn't save us both. Claire took a step closer, and Carter held his ground. I saw the photos. You and that woman. The billionaire. And I realized you've moved on. You have a whole life I'm not part of. But Maya is part of me, and I can't move on until I try. The manipulation of it was clear, using Victoria against him, framing this as Carter having happiness while Claire had nothing. But beneath the strategy, Carter heard something else. Genuine grief. Genuine desire to repair what she'd broken. It didn't change anything, but it complicated his anger, made it harder to hate her cleanly. The court will decide what happens. Until then, you don't contact me. You don't go near Maya's school. You don't try to see her. Understood? Can I write her? Letters you could give her when you think she's ready? Carter wanted to say no, wanted to deny Claire every avenue, but he thought about Maya someday asking about her mother, wanting to understand, thought about having answers instead of just absence. One letter. I'll read it first. If it's appropriate, I'll keep it for when she's older. Claire nodded, wiping at her face. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. It's not for you. It's for Maya, so she knows her mother thought about her, even if from a distance. Carter turned to leave, made it 3 steps before Claire's voice stopped him. The woman, Victoria, do you love her? The question was boundary crossing, inappropriate, none of Claire's business. Carter answered anyway. I don't know yet, but I'm finding out. He walked away without looking back, left Claire standing by the lagoon while swans glided past, indifferent to human drama. Made it to the park exit before pulling out his phone, calling Victoria like she'd asked. She answered on the first ring. How did it go? About as expected. She cried. I stayed angry. Nothing changed, except now I know she's serious about this. Are you okay? Carter looked around at Boston on a Saturday. Families in the park, runners on the path, the city alive and indifferent to individual struggles. No. But I will be. Come over, or I'll come there. You shouldn't be alone. Maya's at a friend's house until 2. I need to pick her up, be normal for her. Then tonight, after she's asleep, we'll have that dinner. I'll cook. You cook? Badly, but I try. A pause. Say yes, Carter. Let me be there for this. He should have said no, should have maintained distance while the custody case unfolded, but standing in the park where he'd just confronted his past, he wanted nothing more than to walk toward a future that included Victoria's terrible cooking and the possibility of not being alone. Yes. Text me your address. Already done. See you at 8. Carter hung up, spent the rest of the day trying to be present for Maya, picking her up, taking her to the library, making grilled cheese for dinner. She talked about her friend's hamster and the new Pixar movie they wanted to see, and Carter listened while thinking about Claire's tears and Margaret Chen's strategy and Victoria's offer of badly cooked dinner. At 7:45, after Maya was asleep and Mrs. Chen had agreed to listen for her, Carter took the tea to Back Bay, following Victoria's address to a brownstone that made his apartment building look like a storage unit. She buzzed him up, met him at the door in jeans and a t-shirt, hair loose, more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. Her apartment was smaller than he expected, just 3 rooms, but each one perfect, decorated with a kind of taste that came from having options. Books everywhere, art that looked original, a kitchen that gleamed with equipment probably never used. "I made pasta." She gestured toward the stove where a pot of water boiled. "Or I'm making pasta. The water's ready. The rest is aspirational." Carter laughed despite everything. "Want help?" "Desperately." They cooked together, Carter teaching her how to salt water properly, how to tell when pasta was done without checking the box. Victoria proved competent with a knife, but hopeless with timing, and by the time they sat down to eat, the marinara was slightly burned and the garlic bread was slightly raw, and it was perfect. "This is terrible." Victoria took another bite anyway. "Why is it terrible?" "Because cooking takes practice, and you probably eat out every night." "Or order in. There's a Thai place that knows my order by heart." She set down her fork, looked at him seriously. "Thank you for letting me do this, for trusting me with the Claire situation, for not running when things got complicated." "You keep thanking me for things that benefit me." "Because I'm used to relationships where everything is transaction, where people stay because of what I can give them, not who I am." She paused. "You scare me, Carter Hayes, because you don't need anything I have, and that makes whatever this is real instead of strategic." Carter reached across the table, took her hand. "I'm terrified too, of getting close to someone whose life operates on a level I barely remember, of dragging Maya into something that might not last, of trusting you and having it cost me what I've built." "Then why are you here?" "Because you're not what I expected, and neither is this." He squeezed her hand gently. "Because when I think about what I want my life to look like a year from now, you're in it. And that's worth being scared." Victoria stood, came around the table, pulled Carter to his feet. She kissed him then, not like the performance kisses of Saturday night, but something real, searching, vulnerable. Carter kissed back, tasting burned tomatoes and possibility, feeling the last of his carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "I'm not good at this, at being real instead of perfect." "Then we'll figure it out together. Be imperfect and real and terrified." Carter wrapped his arms around her, held her close, while Boston hummed 40 feet below. "We're not the happy ending. We're the good beginning."